Humanity had always dreamed of reaching the stars, but no one could have anticipated the discovery that would change everything. Deep beneath the Martian surface, a team of international archaeologists and scientists unearthed an ancient object unlike anything they had ever seen. Buried for millennia, its discovery marked the beginning of a new chapter in human history and a terrifying journey into the unknown. Dr. Eva Sinclair stood in front of the massive artifact, her heart racing as the team worked to clear the surrounding rubble. The object was a perfect sphere, about 10 feet in diameter, etched with strange symbols that pulsed faintly with a bluish glow. It seemed to breathe, the energy flowing in waves that were inexplicably attuned to the electromagnetic field of Mars. The sight was enough to make even the most seasoned researchers hesitate. "Eva, you need to see this," called Dr. Henrik Klaus, the lead physicist, his voice tinged with awe. He was monitoring the energy readings on his portable console. "The artifact, it's generating power, and it's unlike anything we've ever encountered. It's alive." Sinclair walked over, her boots crunching on the red dust. She glanced at the readouts, her brow furrowing as the numbers fluctuated wildly. The readings were erratic, but there was a consistent pattern, a faint pulse of energy that matched the rhythm of the artifact's glow. It wasn't just a machine. It felt conscious, as if it was aware of their presence. "This is impossible," she muttered. "We've found things like this before, alien relics, but nothing like this. It's not just an artifact. It's an engine of some kind, a gateway." The team's excitement was palpable, but so was the underlying fear. They had all heard the rumors of artifacts left behind by long-dead alien civilizations, remnants of races that had vanished before humanity ever reached the stars. But this was different. This artifact was unlike anything they had studied. It was alive, and it was waiting for something. "We need to open it," Sinclair declared, her voice steady despite the unease creeping up her spine. "We've been given a glimpse of something extraordinary. Whatever this is, it could be the key to unlocking untold knowledge. We can't wait any longer." The team went to work, carefully cutting through the rock and metal encasing the artifact. As they worked, the ground began to tremble. At first, it was barely noticeable, but within minutes, the vibrations grew stronger. The air in the chamber seemed to thicken, and a low hum filled the room, emanating from the artifact itself. It was as though the planet itself was responding to their presence. Then, with a sudden lurch, the artifact shifted. The chamber was filled with a blinding flash of light. The team recoiled instinctively, their eyes burning from the intensity. Sinclair's breath caught in her throat as the sphere split open like a blooming flower, revealing a dark, swirling core inside. At that moment, the artifact seemed to come alive in a way that defied logic. The faint symbols that had once pulsed now glowed brilliantly, casting eerie shadows across the walls. Suddenly, a sharp, piercing sound erupted from the core, a signal that echoed across Mars. The noise reverberated through the chamber, shaking the team to their core. It was as if the artifact had just sent a message, one that would be heard throughout the universe. And then, for the briefest moment, everything went silent. The artifact was awake. The Martian base was alive with activity, the once quiet research facility, now a hub of frantic energy. Teams of scientists, engineers, and military personnel worked tirelessly to contain the artifact's unpredictable reactions. Dr. Eva Sinclair stood in the command center, her gaze fixed on the screen displaying real-time data from the artifact. It had been hours since the initial activation, and the readings only grew more perplexing with every passing minute. The symbols on the artifact had changed, shifting in complex patterns that seemed to correlate with the energy surges emanating from its core. "Eva, this is unlike anything we've ever seen," Dr. Henrik Klaus said, his voice filled with equal parts wonder and fear. His fingers hovered over the controls, trying to make sense of the readings. "I've never seen energy patterns like this. It's as though it's trying to communicate." Sinclair nodded, her mind racing. The artifact wasn't just a relic, it was a gateway, a message from a long-extinct civilization. But why now? Why had it waited until humanity's technology was advanced enough to even detect it? And what was it trying to tell them? "We need to decipher these symbols," she said, her voice firm with determination. "We have no idea what we're dealing with here, but the potential is unimaginable. This could be the breakthrough we've been waiting for." The team worked through the night, translating the alien symbols using a combination of linguistic analysis and pattern recognition algorithms. Every few minutes, the data would change, and the symbols would rearrange, as if the artifact itself were testing them, challenging their understanding. As the hours passed, Dr. Sinclair grew increasingly frustrated. The symbols seemed familiar, like pieces of a puzzle that had been seen before, but she couldn't quite put them together. They hinted at something larger, something hidden beneath the surface. She was on the brink of understanding, but it remained just out of reach. The artifact, it seemed, was playing a game with them. Then, without warning, a breakthrough came. One of the linguists, Dr. Nadia Torres, recognized a pattern within the symbols, a series of recurring glyphs that matched those found in ancient Sumerian texts. The connection was tenuous, but it was a clue. Sinclair's heart skipped a beat as she saw the implications. If the Sumerians had encountered this alien knowledge thousands of years ago, it meant that humanity was not the first civilization to stumble upon this secret. The team quickly discovered that the symbols were more than just words. They were coordinates, each one corresponding to a distant star system. They were part of a map that stretched across the galaxy, linking planets, civilizations, and knowledge that had been lost to time. "The artifact, it's a key," Sinclair whispered, almost to herself. "A key to something greater. These coordinates lead to places no one has ever imagined. It's not just a message, it's a map to a forgotten network of knowledge." As the discovery sank in, a new wave of energy flooded the chamber. The artifact hummed, its core now pulsing steadily with a deep, resonant frequency. The map was coming alive. But as the data streamed across the screen, it became clear that the coordinates were not just of distant star systems. They were points in deep space, far beyond what current technology could even reach. Sinclair's pulse quickened. If the artifact's map was correct, humanity had been standing on the threshold of a vast and ancient network of knowledge, hidden from view for eons. But as the first hints of this new reality began to take shape, Sinclair couldn't shake the feeling that they had opened a door they couldn't close. Suddenly, the communication system crackled to life, and the voice of General Alan Ross echoed through the room. "Sinclair, we need to talk. Now." Her stomach churned. Whatever was happening on Mars, it was no longer just about science. It was about something far more dangerous, something that humanity wasn't prepared to confront. The Martian base had become a pressure cooker. The artifact was not just a puzzle, it was a ticking time bomb. Its energy surges were becoming more unpredictable, and the constant hum of its core reverberated through the entire facility, sending waves of unease through the team. Dr. Eva Sinclair paced the command center, her mind racing with questions. What was this thing? What had it awoken? And why did it feel as though the very fabric of reality was starting to unravel around them? At the center of the room, the artifact's spherical shell was now fully open, its inner core radiating a deep, almost hypnotic light. A holographic display shimmered in midair, showing the map of distant star systems they had uncovered the previous night. Each star was marked with glowing symbols, their meanings still elusive, but undeniably important. The energy from the artifact seemed to pulse in rhythm with the galaxy itself, as if it were alive, watching them, waiting for something. Suddenly, a sharp, high-pitched noise broke the silence, a screech that made everyone in the room flinch. The artifact flared, its core flashing brighter than ever before. The walls of the chamber shook violently, as though the very ground beneath them was reacting to the artifact's awakening. Then, in the blink of an eye, the room went dark. the power cut out, plunging the base into an eerie silence. Moments later, the emergency lights flickered on, casting long shadows across the room. The air felt thick, charged with static electricity. And then they heard it, a voice. It was low, guttural, and seemed to come from all directions at once. "You should not have awakened us." The words echoed through the chamber, sending a chill down everyone's spine. Dr. Sinclair's heart raced as she instinctively turned toward the artifact, but it was silent once more. She tried to steady her breath, but the tension in the air was palpable. "Who's there?" she asked, her voice shaky despite her best efforts to remain calm. A figure appeared before them, tall, imposing, and seemingly made of light and shadow. It was humanoid, but its features were indistinct, shifting like smoke. The being's presence was overwhelming, and its eyes glowed with a cold, unfeeling intelligence. "We are the Guardians," the figure spoke, its voice deep and resonant. "The ones who watched over this knowledge. You have broken the veil, and now you have awakened us. You are not ready for what you have unleashed." Sinclair and her team stood frozen, fear and awe mixing in their veins. The Guardians were real. The legends were true. "The knowledge you seek is not for your kind," the Guardian continued. "It is a power that corrupts and destroys. The civilizations before you, those who sought the secrets within the artifact, are gone. They tried to harness the power of the creators and failed. You will not fare any better." The words sent a shiver through Sinclair. She had suspected that there was more to the artifact than met the eye, but hearing it from the entity that had been charged with guarding it made the reality hit harder. The Guardians were ancient, perhaps as old as the stars themselves, and they had been tasked with protecting the secrets locked inside the artifact. "The knowledge is a curse," the Guardian warned. "You think you can control it, but it will control you. It will warp your minds, twist your bodies, and leave you a shell of what you once were. Do not pursue it further. The consequences will be far worse than you can imagine." Dr. Sinclair swallowed hard. She had been prepared for challenges, for the unknown, but nothing could have prepared her for the weight of this warning. The artifact was no mere relic. It was a trap, a snare for the curious and the ambitious. It was a relic of a dead civilization, a piece of a much larger puzzle, and it came with a price. The Guardian's form flickered, its presence intensifying. "Leave now, and we may yet allow you to survive. But if you continue this path, your fate will be sealed. You will become a part of the story of those who tried and failed." With that, the Guardian's image flickered and vanished, leaving the room bathed in a tense silence. The team exchanged uneasy glances, the weight of the warning pressing down on them. Dr. Sinclair stood motionless for a moment, her mind racing. The Guardians had warned them, but what choice did they have now? They had already awakened something that was far beyond their understanding. The knowledge they sought was too great to ignore, and yet, the consequences of pursuing it could be far greater than any of them had imagined. She turned back to the artifact, her resolve hardening. Whatever the risks, they had come too far to turn back now. Humanity's future was at stake, and the secrets of the artifact were too precious to let go. But she knew, deep down, that the path they were about to take could change everything, perhaps even destroy them all. The warning from the Guardians hung over the Martian base like a storm cloud, thick with uncertainty and fear. Dr. Eva Sinclair stood at the center of the command room, surrounded by her team, each of them struggling to comprehend what they had just witnessed. The holographic display of the artifact's map still hovered before them, the coordinates to distant star systems glowing ominously. The knowledge they had uncovered felt like a call, an irresistible pull to something greater, but at what cost? "We can't just stop now," Sinclair said, her voice resolute, though a part of her trembled at the weight of their decision. "The Guardians want us to turn back, to abandon this discovery, but that's not why we're here. This could change everything. The knowledge in that artifact, it could advance humanity by centuries. But at what price?" Dr. Henrik Kloss countered, his voice strained. He had been one of the first to express doubts about continuing the research, and the encounter with the Guardians had only deepened his fears. The Guardians were clear. This isn't just a treasure trove of information. It's a weapon, a force that could twist humanity into something unrecognizable. Sinclair looked around at the team. She saw the fear in their eyes, but she also saw something else, the same hunger that had driven them all to this point. They weren't just scientists. They were explorers, adventurers, and dreamers. The temptation of uncovering the ultimate secrets of the universe was too strong for most to resist. "Henrik, I know the risks," she said, her voice softening, "but I've seen what this knowledge can do. It's not just power, it's the potential to cure diseases, to end poverty, to solve problems we've been struggling with for millennia. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If we don't pursue it, someone else will, and I'd rather it be us. Humanity's future depends on it." Henrik's eyes narrowed, and for a long moment, he said nothing. He knew she was right, but the weight of what they were discussing felt like an anchor pulling him down. "And if we're wrong?" he asked quietly. "What if this knowledge ends up being our undoing?" A silence fell over the room. The team had been divided from the start. Some believed in the promise of the artifact, while others were wary of the darkness lurking within its secrets. The Guardian's warning had only deepened the divide. Dr. Nadia Torres, a linguist who had been instrumental in decoding the symbols, spoke up. "I understand the fear, but if we don't act, we risk letting this knowledge slip through our fingers. We could change the course of human history, or we could destroy ourselves trying. But isn't it worth the risk to try? We owe it to the future." Sinclair turned her gaze back to the artifact. Its core now pulsed with a steady rhythm, almost as though it were waiting for them to make a decision. It was alive with potential, a vast reservoir of knowledge just waiting to be tapped. But tapping it meant confronting the darkness it carried with it. "We don't have time to hesitate," she said, her voice firm again. "We have the map, and we have the knowledge we've unlocked so far. If we back down now, the Guardians win. They'll keep humanity in the dark forever, and we'll never know what we could have achieved." Sinclair's mind flashed to the vision of the galaxy the artifact had shown them, planets with technologies far beyond anything Earth had ever known. The temptation to reach out, to explore, to claim that power for humanity was overwhelming, but the price was still uncertain, and she couldn't ignore the nagging fear in the pit of her stomach. "I'll do it," she declared, her voice ringing through the tense room. "I'll continue. We'll continue." Henrik's eyes flickered with doubt, but he nodded reluctantly. "If you're sure. But I'm not going down this path without a plan. If this goes south, we need to have contingencies. We need to be ready for whatever comes next." The team silently agreed, each of them making a choice, whether to trust in the potential of the artifact or to face the terrifying unknown that lay ahead. They had crossed a line, one that couldn't be uncrossed. The next steps would take them further into the dark heart of the universe, and they had no way of knowing what they would find. As the decision was made, the artifact's pulse grew stronger, as though acknowledging their choice. It was a promise, a contract forged in the unknown. They had chosen the path of power, and now, there was no turning back. The decision had been made. Dr. Eva Sinclair and her team had chosen the path that would lead them into the heart of an unknown cosmos, where the promise of unimaginable power hung before them like a tempting fruit. But as they began to activate the next phase of the artifact's mechanisms, the true cost of their pursuit became painfully clear. The base was quiet, save for the low hum of the artifact's core. The team had worked tirelessly, setting up a series of systems to interface with the ancient object. Its energy readings had grown even more erratic, but Sinclair was determined. She had to know what lay beyond the veil the artifact had shown them, a map to distant stars and forgotten knowledge. There was no turning back now. "Are we sure about this?" Henrik Claus asked, his voice hoarse from a lack of sleep. His eyes were bloodshot, a sign of the long hours they had spent trying to decode the artifact's symbols. We don't know what we're unlocking. For all we know, we could be releasing something worse than we can imagine. Sinclair looked up at him, her face a mask of resolve. We've come too far to stop now. The Guardians gave us a warning, but that's all it was, a warning. We can handle whatever comes next. But as she spoke the words, doubt gnawed at the edges of her certainty. She had always believed in the power of knowledge, in its potential to transform the world. But the Guardians' warning echoed in her mind. Their civilization had failed, and now they were the ones standing on the precipice. Could humanity truly handle the power they were about to unleash? The artifact shifted again, as if responding to her thoughts. The light from its core intensified, and the symbols on its surface began to spin faster, as if the object was coming to life. An unearthly hum filled the air, and for a moment, the entire room seemed to vibrate with an unseen energy. Then, the holographic map flickered, and a new set of coordinates appeared. They were not in the stars. These coordinates pointed to a location deep beneath the surface of Mars itself. This wasn't on the map before, Nadia Torres said, her voice filled with a mix of awe and apprehension. It's showing us something beneath the surface of the planet. Sinclair stared at the coordinates, her heart racing. What was hidden there? Why had the artifact guided them to this specific point? She had no answer, but her curiosity and sense of purpose overpowered her fear. Prepare the excavation team, Sinclair ordered. We need to get down there. Whatever it is, it could be the key to everything. Hours later, a drill team descended into the Martian depths, their machinery cutting through the rocky layers of the planet's crust. As they reached the coordinates, the drill encountered a strange material, unlike any known substance. It was dense and almost alive, pulsing with an energy that seemed to react to their presence. The drill bit struggled to break through it, as though the surface itself was resisting them. I've never seen anything like this, the lead engineer, Marco Delgado, reported. It's as if the material is protecting something, but I think we're close. We'll need to reinforce the drill though. It's like it doesn't want us to get any closer. Sinclair watched the feed intently. The deeper they dug, the more she felt the weight of their choice pressing down on her. The artifact had not just offered them a map, it had led them to this moment, to this underground chamber that no human had ever touched. Finally, with a deafening roar, the drill broke through. The view from the cameras showed a massive underground vault, its walls covered in the same glowing symbols that adorned the artifact. But there was something else, a figure, half buried in the rock, its form humanoid, but twisted. It was encased in the same strange material, its eyes hollow, staring into nothing. This is it, Sinclair whispered, her voice shaking. The figure was a reminder of the price that had already been paid. This was the end of the line for those who had come before them. The knowledge they sought had already claimed its price. As the team gathered their courage to enter the vault, Sinclair felt the full weight of their decision. This was no longer a quest for knowledge, it was a journey into the darkness, a search for something that had been buried for a reason. The artifact had awakened, but with it came something more than just the secrets of the stars. It had led them to the very heart of a power that might consume them all. The underground chamber was like a tomb, its vast, silent emptiness pressing in on Sinclair and her team as they descended further into the heart of Mars. The walls were lined with strange symbols that glowed faintly, casting an eerie light over the scene. At the center of the chamber stood the figure, half buried in the strange, crystalline substance. It was humanoid in shape, but its skin was smooth and metallic, like it had been crafted rather than born. The eyes, or what had once been eyes, were now hollow sockets, staring into the void with an unnerving stillness. Dr. Sinclair felt a shiver crawl up her spine as she moved closer to the figure. It was impossible to tell if it had once been human or something else entirely. but the energy in the chamber, the pulsating hum from the walls, and the strange material surrounding them, suggested that whatever this being was, it was important, key to unlocking the artifact's true purpose. "Do we know what it is?" Nadia Torres asked, her voice barely a whisper as she studied the figure. "Is it one of the creators?" Sinclair shook her head. "I don't know, but I think we're about to find out." The walls of the chamber were carved with the same symbols they had seen on the artifact, but these weren't just random markings. They formed intricate patterns, as though they were instructions, or perhaps warnings. It was clear that this place, whatever it was, held secrets that had been buried for a reason. But Sinclair's curiosity burned hotter than her fear. They had come this far. There was no turning back. Marco Delgado and his team carefully moved in, securing the area as they approached the figure. As they set to work removing the crystalline material that encased the being, the atmosphere grew heavier, more oppressive. The moment the last of the substance was cleared, the figure's body seemed to stir, as if it had been waiting for their arrival. Then, with a jolt, the figure's eyes opened. The team froze. The creature, or whatever it was, shifted slowly, its limbs stiff and unnatural, like a marionette brought to life. It emitted a low, guttural hum that reverberated through the chamber, a noise that sent a shockwave of cold fear through Sinclair's chest. It was alive, but not in the way they understood life. It was something else, something ancient and terrifying. The figure turned its head toward them, its hollow eyes locking onto Sinclair's. For a long moment, neither moved. Then, a voice filled the room, not from the creature's mouth, but from everywhere at once. "You should not have come," the voice intoned, its tone deep and resonant, like an echo from a forgotten age. "This knowledge was never meant for you." Sinclair's breath caught in her throat. The creature's words seemed to reverberate in her mind, as though they were being whispered directly into her consciousness. "Who are you?" Sinclair demanded, her voice steady, though every fiber of her being screamed to flee. "What are you?" The creature's gaze deepened, as if it were assessing her very soul. "We are the last of the Watchers, the ones who protected the knowledge of the creators. And now, you have awoken it. The knowledge you seek is the very thing that destroyed us." Sinclair's mind raced. The knowledge they had been chasing, the artifact's promise of power, had destroyed this ancient civilization. The Watchers had been its protectors, but even they had fallen. What had the creators left behind, and why had they hidden it so carefully? The creature's form shimmered, like a projection fading in and out of reality. "You think you seek knowledge, but knowledge is a burden," it continued, its voice tinged with sorrow and warning. "The power within the artifact is not meant for your kind. It is a force that corrupts, reshapes, and ultimately consumes." Sinclair stepped forward, her heart pounding in her chest. "We can handle it," she said, though even she wasn't sure if she believed it. "We can learn from it. We can use it to build a better future." The Watcher's gaze hardened. "You misunderstand. It is not a gift. It is a weapon, and you will not control it. You will be consumed, just as we were. You are the final warning." The figure's form flickered one last time, and then it collapsed, turning to dust before their eyes. The chamber fell silent, the only sound the distant hum of the artifact in the control room above. The knowledge that had once been locked away was now theirs for the taking, but it came with a heavy price, a warning that Sinclair could not ignore. The team stood frozen, each of them processing what they had just witnessed. Sinclair looked at the walls, the glowing symbols that seemed to pulse with the weight of centuries. They had unlocked the secrets of the artifact, but now the true cost of that knowledge was becoming painfully clear. "Do we keep going?" Henrik asked, his voice tense with uncertainty. Sinclair hesitated, her mind reeling with the implications. They had come too far to stop now, but the weight of the Watcher's words hung over her. They were standing at the edge of a precipice, and the knowledge they sought might very well pull them into the abyss. "Yes," she said, her voice unwavering. "We keep going. but we need to be prepared for what comes next. The silence in the chamber was deafening. The watcher had turned to dust before their eyes, leaving nothing but a faint shimmer in the air. The team stood motionless, absorbing the weight of what they had just witnessed. The creature's words echoed in their minds, reverberating through their thoughts like an unstoppable tide. The knowledge they had uncovered, what they had sought for so long, was not a gift, but a harbinger of doom. They had unlocked something far beyond their understanding. Dr. Sinclair felt the ground shift beneath her feet, as though the very fabric of reality had begun to warp. The artifact's hum had deepened, and the walls of the chamber seemed to pulse with a life of their own. She glanced around at her team, each of them grappling with the enormity of the situation. The promise of power had led them this far, but now they were standing on the brink of something far more terrifying. "We need to leave," Henrik Klaus said, his voice filled with urgency. "We've already gone too far. We were warned. The Watcher's right. We can't control this." Sinclair turned to him, her face pale but resolute. "We can't just walk away now, not after everything we've uncovered. This is humanity's chance to evolve, to transcend our limits. If we stop now, all of this, everything we've done, will be for nothing." Henrik's face twisted with frustration. "It's already too late for us. Do you think we're the first to seek out this power? Do you think we're the first to have been seduced by it? The Watchers, the ones who guarded this place, they were like us. They sought knowledge, and it destroyed them." The tension between them was palpable. Sinclair knew Henrik was right, but she couldn't bring herself to accept it. They had already come too far, and the lure of the artifact's promise was too strong to ignore. As the debate continued, the artifact's core flared brightly. The holographic map of the galaxy flickered once more, but this time, something was different. The stars were shifting, and new patterns were emerging, patterns that had not been there before. The symbols etched into the walls seemed to align with the constellations, pointing to an unknown region of space, one that had been hidden from view until now. Sinclair's breath caught as she realized what it meant. The artifact was no longer simply a map. It was a beacon, a signal to something, or someone, out there in the cosmos. The knowledge they had unlocked wasn't just from an ancient civilization. It was a message, and it was calling out to whoever had the power to understand it. The ground trembled again, more violently this time. The chamber's walls seemed to crack, and deep within the planet, something stirred. The artifact's light intensified, its energy now reaching a fever pitch, as though it were drawing power from somewhere far beyond Mars. Sinclair's pulse quickened as she realized the magnitude of what they had set in motion. "This isn't just about us anymore," Nadia Torres said, her voice trembling. "The artifact, it's not just a relic. It's a weapon. It's a signal. And whatever it's calling, it's coming." The team exchanged frantic glances. The gravity of the situation was sinking in. They weren't just on the brink of an extraordinary discovery. They were on the precipice of a cosmic reckoning. The very fabric of their reality was shifting, and the consequences of their actions were now far beyond their control. The tremors grew stronger, the hum of the artifact now vibrating in their bones. Suddenly, the chamber's lights flickered, and the walls seemed to ripple like a mirage. A low, guttural sound began to emanate from deep within the planet, an ancient noise that seemed to speak of an age before time itself. Sinclair's thoughts raced. The Watchers had warned them of this. This knowledge, this power, it was never meant for them. It had destroyed civilizations long before theirs, and yet, here they were, standing on the edge of an unknown abyss, with no idea what would happen when they crossed it. "We need to stop it," Henrik said, his voice desperate now. "We have to shut it down before it's too late." Sinclair turned to him, her heart heavy with the weight of their choices, but deep down, she knew it was already too late to reverse what they had set in motion. The knowledge was already changing them, warping their perceptions of reality. They had awoken something ancient, something vast, and now there was no stopping it. "It's too late to turn back," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the growing hum. The reckoning is already here. The ground shook once more, and with it, the artifact's light flared to a blinding intensity. The very air seemed to crackle with energy, and the team was engulfed in a wave of power so intense it threatened to consume them. The artifact's call had been answered, and now, whatever had been waiting for them in the darkness of the cosmos was coming to claim what it had been promised. The chamber was a maelstrom of energy, the artifact's glow now blinding. Sinclair could barely make out the outlines of her team through the brilliant light as the air hummed with an intensity that seemed to warp reality itself. The tremors had grown into violent quakes, shaking the walls and floor of the chamber as though the very heart of Mars were about to rupture. The ground beneath them cracked open, revealing fiery depths. Outside, the dark Martian sky pulsed with an ominous light, as if the entire planet was responding to the artifact's call. Sinclair could feel it in her chest, the weight of the moment pressing down on her. The knowledge they had unlocked was no longer just an intellectual pursuit. It was a force, an ancient power that had slumbered beneath the surface for eons, and now it had awoken. It had been calling to something beyond their comprehension, and the time for answers was rapidly approaching. But the real question was, what would emerge in response to the signal? The ground rumbled beneath their feet, and the air thickened with the smell of ozone. Nadia's face was pale, her eyes wide with fear. "It's coming," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "We can't stop it now." Sinclair's mind raced. The Watcher's warning echoed in her thoughts. Knowledge is a burden. She had believed they could control it, use it for humanity's benefit. But in the face of what was coming, she realized how naive that belief had been. They had unleashed something far beyond their capacity to handle. "We still have a chance," Sinclair said, her voice strong, even as the world around her seemed to fracture. "We have to make one final attempt to shut it down. We have the override codes from the artifact's core. If we can access the central system." Henrik interrupted her, shaking his head. "It's too late. The artifact is a beacon. It's calling something much older than us, and we're too far gone. The system's already overridden itself. There's no way to reverse it." The weight of those words hung heavy in the air, but Sinclair refused to accept it. She looked over at the artifact, its core now pulsing erratically, its energy swelling to an almost unimaginable level. The symbols on the walls were glowing brighter, shifting, as though they were alive, responding to the unseen force that was drawing nearer. She turned to the rest of the team, their faces filled with dread. They had made a choice that had led them to this point. Now, they had to make one more. "We don't know what's coming," Sinclair said, her voice steady. "But I'm not going to let this destroy us. We take a gamble. We overload the core, force a collapse of the system before it can fully activate. It's a long shot, but it might be our only chance to stop this before it's too late." Henrik's eyes met hers, torn between fear and hope. "If it works, we destroy everything. Not just the artifact, but the knowledge, the map, everything we've found." "I know," Sinclair replied, "but we have no other choice. We can't let humanity fall into this, whatever it is." The team hesitated, but Sinclair could see the resolve in their eyes. They had come this far, and they weren't ready to watch the world burn for their hubris. Nadia was the first to nod, followed by Henrik and Marco. They moved quickly to prepare the override sequence. As they worked, the ground trembled again, this time with a force that rattled their bones. The artifact was nearing its critical threshold. Whatever was coming, it was almost here. The sky above them darkened, and in the distance, strange shapes began to form in the sky, a gathering of shadows, unfathomable and vast. It was as if the cosmos itself was preparing to descend upon them. Sinclair's heart pounded in her chest as she looked at the team. "We do this now. Together. On 3. 1, 2, 3. They pressed the final commands into the control panels, and the artifact's core flashed a blinding white light. The air crackled with power, and the tremors intensified as the artifact's energy surged. Then, with a deafening roar, the core began to implode. The symbols on the walls shattered, and the ground beneath them cracked open wider. For a moment, Sinclair felt as though the world was being torn apart. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the light and noise stopped. The artifact lay still, its energy drained. The chamber was silent, save for the sound of their heavy breathing. They had done it, they had shut it down. But the sky outside was still dark, the strange shapes in the distance unresolved. They had stopped the immediate threat, but had they truly averted the cosmic reckoning, or had they simply bought time? Sinclair turned to her team, their faces a mix of exhaustion, relief, and lingering fear. "We've bought humanity a chance," she said quietly, "but the rest of the galaxy, the universe, may still have its own reckoning to deliver." The tremors subsided, and the artifact remained inert, but deep in the silence, Sinclair knew one truth that could never be erased. The knowledge they had sought had been more than they could bear, and the true cost of unlocking it might still be waiting, hidden in the vast expanse of space, or perhaps in the deepest recesses of their own minds. The final gamble had been won, but the stakes had never been higher.